All right, so Weijia Jiang is joining us now from the White House to talk a little more about this. So, Weijia, if President Biden and the Democrats actually don't need Republican support to pass their COVID relief bill, why have the meeting that he had yesterday? What's the point?
Well, you know, ever since even before he was inaugurated, President Biden has made clear that he wants to unify the country, and that includes political unity. So, of course, he wanted to hear out these Republicans and invite them to the White House to hear about their ideas. And the White House insists that he still wants a bipartisan deal, even though it doesn't look like it's going to go that way. So, you know, he wants to show that he's making effort, and Republicans really appreciate it. They said afterward that even though they didn't come to a new deal, that at least the conversation is happening. And so, you know, we expect to see more of this from the president as negotiations continue.
Yeah, it was interesting, Weijia, that the meeting was only supposed to last about an hour, and it went longer than 2 hours. Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy was one of those 10 Republicans in yesterday's meeting with President Biden, and he talked about their discussion earlier on CBS This Morning. I want to play a bit of what he had to say.
There's been 5 COVID relief packages passed with a Republican president and a Republican Senate, which have been bipartisan. 5 of them. Now, all of a sudden, the 6th can't be bipartisan. Now, that's a little bit kind of ironic because the president's message has been a call for unity and bipartisanship. We had bipartisanship for the first 5, and it's out the window on the 6th. It seems like we should be able to come together, but it would start with having a common set of facts and suppositions by which we could make our decisions.
Well, for a lot of Americans who are struggling right now, who've been waiting for several months for relief, that does seem to be the common unifying factor for both Democrats and Republicans. So I guess, Weijia, what's the next step in the process, and when can we expect this action on COVID relief?
So Democrats really want to get a deal done before the current unemployment benefits expire in mid-March. I mean, you know, as you mentioned, so many families around the country are struggling just to pay their bills. And Republicans say, you know, they want to help those people as well, but let's target the relief. Let's send the money to where it's needed most rather than allow some families and individuals who are still getting paychecks to also reap the benefits of stimulus checks, as an example. You know, as we mentioned in our piece, they really want to drill down on who gets those checks and how much they are worth, making them $1,000 versus $1,400. So that's just one example of how they want to target the relief instead of blanket it to many Americans. But, you know, when you talk to people, even if they are, you know, still getting paid, it might not be as much. Perhaps a family member lost their job. So, you know, I think, at least for me, talking to friends and families and other Americans, you know, people are struggling, even if they are not unemployed. And so that's the president's argument that, you know, you can't really determine who is struggling the most since everyone's having a hard time getting through this pandemic.
So meanwhile, Weijia, President Biden is set to sign a series of executive orders having to do with immigration today, mostly aimed at undoing former President Trump's policies. What can you tell us about those executive orders?
Right. So the White House has made clear that they believe the former president's policies were chaotic and confusing. And so today, President Biden is set to sign 3 executive orders that will review the legal immigration process. It will also form a task force to reunite those families and children who were separated at the southern border. And they'll also review the way that asylum seekers are processed at the border. You know, President Trump had a really hard time accepting the fact that the U.S. would take in these refugees because he claimed that, you know, they were just using an excuse to try to ultimately come to the country and never leave without getting documents. And so the Biden administration is going to take a closer look at that and probably restore it to what it was, which is not making asylum seekers wait in another country, instead allowing them to do so in the U.S. But, you know, these are just executive actions that he can do. When you're talking about broader, more impactful things, he's really going to have to pass a bill, and that is one of his goals, to do that with lawmakers. But some Republicans are already upset about these executive orders because they supported Mr. Trump's crackdown at the border. So that's not going to make it easier when Mr. Biden tries to find some bipartisanship for legislation.
Weijia, let me switch gears a bit. CBS News has obtained a copy of the memo from one of former President Trump's pollsters. Now, this analyzes the 5 states he won in 2016 but lost in 2020. Take us through some of the key findings, because according to the former president, he lost the election because he claims it was rigged and because of major fraud, which are lies and unfounded claims. What are you learning?
So you're right. Our chief Washington correspondent, Major Garrett, got a copy of this memo. And it's really interesting because it spells out exactly where the former president lost support, and that was namely among white voters, more specifically among white men. So you look at the numbers, and it shows that, especially with voters between the ages of 18 and 29 and those who are above 65, he really lost support. And a reason may be his handling of the coronavirus. That was a top issue in all these states, and in the states that he lost especially show that people were not satisfied by the way that he responded to the virus, which might explain, that other figure we just talked about for people who are 65 and older, who the virus impacts the most. And so I think, Vlad, I've heard you talk about before that you've thought about what could have been. And you can't help but wonder what could have been if the former president had listened to his medical experts and had not decided to take the reins of the messaging and give information that did not match the data. Because it seems, according at least here to this study that looked at the states that he lost, that's why he lost, was that he was not able to get control of the virus in a way that people trusted him.
It's an excellent point, and we've talked about it, all three of us, on this broadcast several times. That had the president early on in March told the American people that it is a big deal, that they should wear masks, they should socially distance. That who knows how history would have treated the legacy of President Trump, because he was coming off. He had the wind in his back with a strong economy, a number of successes with a Republican-controlled Senate. So almost, in hindsight, seems like a no-brainer. And now the polling reflects that. Weijia, always great to talk to you. It looks lovely there in D.C. I got to tell you, I know it's a big pain in the butt getting around town, but it really, really does look nice. A very pretty picture of the White House behind you.
Thank you. Yeah, it feels like I'm standing in the middle of a snow globe.
It's
nice when you don't have to go walk and try to drive around in it.
I will order my Weijia snow globe on Amazon very, very soon. Looking forward to that. Thank you, Weijia.
I love it.